Hello, welcome to this presentation. Today we're going to discuss about play, games, and play-based pedagogies. My name is Aspasia Dania. I'm coming from the National and Capodistron University of Athens in Greece, and I am teaching in physical education, teacher education at my faculty, where I'm preserving and I am disseminating the power of games and play. As I said, I'm preserving and disseminating the joy and power of using play as a process in education for motivating our learners. And for doing so, we're working with pedagogies that apply games in a playful approach so that to teach students about various skills. I'm also talking from the perspective of the Teaching Games for Understanding organization, that, as you have possibly heard, which is disseminating the power of game-based approaches and the power of playful pedagogies. Let's unpack what is play-based learning and why do we need to engage with play during education, during the process of educating students via movement. Play-based learning is an approach where children, students in our case, actively engage with their environment through play. We're really interested in the active learning process and the engagement of students because we believe that in this way we can promote their holistic development. And what do we mean with holistic development? We mean all those qualities that have to do with the physical, the social, the emotional, the cognitive, and the creative potential of our students. We use play-based pedagogies because in this way we encourage symbolic representation, which is very important for the learning process because it helps students organize, construct, pretend, and explore. What are the core principles of engaging with play-based learning so that we know that we are in the process of applying games and play in a way that engage and motivate our learners? First of all, when we engage with playful pedagogies, we focus on three core elements. These are choice, wonder, and delight. Let me discuss a little bit what each of these means. Why do we need choice? We need students and children to make decisions about their learning. And if we engage them in playful pedagogies, we need them to make decisions during the process of play. Play gives them the opportunity to have choice and to have a voice. In this way, they become autonomous learners. Wonder. We need games and play that foster curiosity, that foster exploration, that makes the learning process an experiential laboratory. So we need to build our lesson plans and our lesson activities in a playful way that focuses on the wonder of the experience of discovering something which is new, which is and which fosters curiosity. During this process, delight is that element where we can see that our students engage in the learning process with their full emotional intensity, with their full emotional state. And this brings joy to the process and makes the experience playful and engaging. What does choice feel like for students? You can see or you can hear them saying that when they're given choice, they feel empowered. When they're given choice to choose between different eventful encounters during the game or during the playful activities, they feel autonomous. They feel that they own the process. And this is very important because ownership is a fundamental part of their learning. And based on that, their intrinsic motivation will alter as part of their participation in this activity. What does it look like as a teacher? How can you see that students feel like empowered, autonomous because they are given choice? You can see them setting their own goals, negotiating, addressing challenges during the game process effectively, finding a common purpose, which is very important for their decision making, sharing ideas, choosing roles and collaborators, and there are various activities that you can help them develop these skills. And usually, when at the more advanced levels, you can see them making and changing the rules of their games and play. What does a wonder feel like? How do you know that your students or the learners are feeling wonder? You can see them amazed during the learning process. You can see them rather intrigued and absorbed, and this makes them confident because by being intrigued and by being absorbed in the learning process, you start standing on your feet. How does it look like? They are smiling, and this is part of the process. It's part of the learning process. That's what education is about, to feel joyful. Their eyes are widening. Their bodies are leaning forward because they're eager to engage more in the learning process. And there are usually some bursts of action after some pauses for stillness, as if they are pausing to sense the wonder and based on that engage in a burst of action. What does delight feel like? We know that delight feels like enjoyment, excitement, satisfaction, and inspiration and pride. These all raise their sense of belonging, and it looks like that by engaging in the process, they feel that they look like they're celebrating their participation. They're smiling and laughing, and their participation brings anticipation for more and more. So this is always more and choice, wonder, and delight. Based on these core elements, we need to engage more with play-based learning in all its different variations, because as you can see, we have lots of types of play and lots of ways of designing playful experience, because we as teachers and teacher educators, we really believe on the benefits of play. Research shows that play-based learning enhances critical thinking and problem-solving skills. We saw that before because by designing playful activities, you give students more opportunities to make choices, to be autonomous learners. In this way, during the process of negotiation and seeking the best possible way of participating, you support their language development and their communication, because through negotiation, through active listening, through development of more rules and changes and tactics, they need to communicate, they need to negotiate. This also builds their social skills and emotional resilience, not only in terms of winning and losing, but also the resilience of being engaged in social encounters where you have to step in front or step at the back, depending on the balance of your team. And in this way, all these skills foster a love for learning, which is very important and fundamental, not only for students, but for every human being. But apart from all, we need play to have flow. Remember yourself. When was the last time you felt completely absorbed in what you were doing? Just reflect on that moment. Was that moment playful? Did you experience flow? Did you experience that time was just something that you didn't care about? It was either moving so fast or so slow? This state of total immersion where time disappears and everything seems to flow effortlessly is exactly what is happening when students are experiencing this joy of play, or this what we call playfulness. That's why we invest so much in play-based pedagogies and playful learning. Usually, the problem that we face in education is this narrative or this old mindset that focuses on teaching with the use of play activities, not necessarily playful, but activities based on some rules and some strategies that are very teacher directed and very content focused. They don't focus on the process, and they don't focus and don't invest much on the core principles of choice, wonder, and delight. We have this new and always emerging possibility to focus on play in an exploratory and joy-driven way. And please, we often hear that there isn't enough research to support. On the contrary, I think this is a false narrative. There's lots of research coming from very disciplinary perspectives that says that play is essential. It's not something extra. It's not an add-on activity that you put at the end of your lesson just to satisfy your students after them staying engaged in all these old and teacher-directed activities. Play, and the truth, is not a break from learning. It's exactly the process where learning comes best. And this is supported by findings coming from psychology, findings coming from educational research, findings coming from neuroscience. Everything reveals that play activates all those optimal states for engaging in what we call deep learning. So play is not a reward for staying without making noise and for staying focused in activities that students are not interested. Play is where learning happens best. So how do you know that you are working with play and this is play and not a kind of play activity? Play is voluntary. Play is something that brings joy, autonomy, exploration, and imagination. Are you focusing on these elements when you are designing your lesson plans? Do you explore more possibilities for bringing elements of joy with working with emotions during a process of lesson design, or for giving opportunities during the process of lesson design to your students to direct their own exploration? Are you over prescriptive, or you are letting them opportunities to explore? What does exploration means in a lesson plan? It means creating safe spaces, so dividing your groups in your classes in small groups and giving them the opportunity to test ideas, to take risks and discover new possibilities, and always giving some scenarios of games and play so they can transform reality into practice and think in their own ways. But how can I do that? You may ask at this point, how can I do that? What kinds of play can I use? It's not necessary to use only movement games or play that engages the body like we do in physical education. There are many types of play, starting from dramatic play, where symbols are used and props, and you may use with a familiar story, with role playing, with engaging them also with some scenarios where there's a story with them playing in their community or with their family. You can also use fantasy play, which may be a dramatization of events from a favorite program or a superhero, for example, or an action figure, and always includes more than one learner. You may use exploratory play, where you experiment with properties, equipment of objects, digital tools, and things such as clay that help them explore concepts. Manipulative play, small word play, or games with rules, as we're doing in physical education, where you can also introduce board games, especially for young learners. But always you need to bridge skills with challenge. We were talking before about flow. What does flow means? Flow is the ratio between challenge and skills. You need to find this ratio at an optimal level, depending on your students, depending on the age of your students, on their interests, of their readiness to take risks or take decisions. Because if you have low challenge and high skill, you may bring disengagement, and disengagement brings boredom. So joy, we were talking before, is lost. Or on the other hand, if you have high challenge but low skill, you may produce frustration and anxiety. So you need to come to be in a constant attunement to what is happening in your teaching so that you always try to preserve the optimal, and there's no one optimal. It depends on what you're working with, what is the context you're working with, what are the experiences and the reactions of the students, but also the fact that skills are growing. Skills are not static. Students, and especially young learners, are not structures that develop only in a linear way. So their relationality is affecting their skill level. So as their skill level and in their relations are changing, you need always to draft the best possible scenario, the best possible type of play that will bring the optimal ratio between challenge and skill to preserve the flow of the game experience or the play experience. So how do you know that you are achieving this optimal ratio? You need to focus on the following dimensions of flow. First of all, flow needs concentration. And you need to notice, to be attentive to the present moment, which means that you are not imposing many rules. You try to work with basic and open-ended games, so in case attention is lost, you can make easily changes. You don't put extrinsic rewards. The activity per se is satisfying, and this is where emotional intensity comes. If you experience the process of learning, the process of playful learning as rewarding and satisfying by itself, you don't expect something to come afterwards as a reward. Also, you know that there is flow in the game when the game flows, when the game evolves in a way that hours or minutes is something that is rather relevant. In order to achieve that, you need a balance between awareness and action. So it's different part of the game, it's different variation, it's different modification of the game or the play activity that you design needs to keep the students attuned to an effortless and rather automatic way of adjusting to what is happening. Flow also happens when you escape criticism, not only criticism of you, but criticism of the others. You don't focus on criticizing the experience, but you are just experiencing, and this is rather deliberative. You feel freedom if you escape criticism, and this also raises your sense of control. So you know that these are interconnected states. This is not one singular experience. There is no one specific way of doing this. But if you're focusing on these dimensions, when you're designing specific play-based learning activities, you know that you are raising the opportunities to produce a lesson that has flow. So how can we see this in action? When we have designed a game that helps students to be fully attentive to what is happening, you can see them rather absorbed. Sometimes you may call them and they don't hear their name. This is focused attention. They feel rather absorbed. When you have succeeded in merging action and awareness, especially in imaginative play, there is flawless action that doesn't take much negotiation, that escapes a little bit of structure. So this happens when you see them shifting effortlessly between different roles or different parts of the activity. So they become aware of the process, they become engaged more, and this brings more action. When you know that they've lost their sense of self-criticism and anxiety, when they can experiment freely, They're not listening for others' judgment, or they're not waiting for your permission in order to move to the next step. This is not a responsibility. This is awareness that I'm stepping on my feet and I'm moving correctly to what is happening by taking into account what's happening around me. When they start believing in themselves and they're feeling more capable, you can see them designing their own games, creating more rules, negotiating and adjusting to challenges. And this is a very important moment because the agency moves from your intentions to their action. And it's there that everyone loses sense of time, both you as a teacher and your group, because everything flows so effortlessly. There's this sense of joyful and playfulness around that you just don't keep watching at the time and saying, oh, come on, where is this lesson going to end? And this is rather important because it's a very engaged and creative moment. And all this experience is intrinsically rewarding per se. So you just don't imposing something to the situation, you let it evolve. And the satisfaction comes at the moment that the students really feel that this is a rather rewarding and embodied experience. So what can you do as a teacher to sustain all these qualities? What can you do? How do you know how to best design the best playful experiences for your students? Please don't start overthinking. Just trust yourself and apply these 3 basic rules. First of all, you are there to facilitate. You're not there to direct their learning experience. This is rather important because this adjusts your role. Your role is to complement what is happening, to provide, to scaffold, to encourage, and not to direct. So not overplan. It's good to work with open-ended games and playful experiences so that you can change and adapt. I said at the beginning that this is rather working as an experiential laboratory. Nothing is overly structured and predetermined. Also, provide scaffolding experiences depending on the level of exploration, depending on the level of engagement, depending on the stage of flow that you're observing. And that's why you need to divide your class in different groups and not be many students per group, 5, 6, the maximum, so that you can address the needs of each different group accordingly. And please observe, let your students play. Set up the playful experience and let them play. Observe them as they play and reflect on what is best for them based on their reactions, based on their skills, based on their levels of engagement, based on the ratio of challenge and skill that the play experience is producing, and then make adjustments that will make them play what they are already playing better. Don't add a different game or a different playful experience because this will be rather disturbing for the flow. This will adjust the level of challenge and will need different skills so that it will make it will be a challenge to the flow of the class. So what you can do is to organize your games or play activities as spaces that encourage exploration or creativity. Don't start thinking that I need to design a game. Start thinking that I need to design a space where I can encourage exploration. Provide diverse materials and resources. For us working in physical education, this is rather important because equipment is something that affects the playful experience. Ensure that the atmosphere in your groups and generally the atmosphere, the atmosphere of the lesson is safe and supportive for risk taking, because for some students the risk may be just to raise their hand and say their opinion, while for other students, the risk may be to do some complex skills, running fast, dodging, catching balls, and scoring. So the level of challenge and risk for everyone is completely different. Take this into account and be sure that what you are designing as a space is safe and supportive for all. Encourage teamwork and empathy because collaboration and social interaction are changing as the flow of the game is changing. So as you generate a different flow is generated, different levels of collaboration and interaction are needed. Encourage between different games and different game activities with some questioning. Encourage students to focus on their collaboration, their interaction. Sometimes in the role playing and support the role playing and the narratives that students are producing and teach them in one way or another that they need to work with their conflict resolution skills as they're adjusting, as they're making changes in the game rules, and promote this strategy as well. We all need to design games in a way that and play that align with curriculum goals. So when you start designing your lesson plans, be sure that the content of your games or the playful experience is aligned with curriculum goals, and it's not something that is an add-on, and it's not in alignment with what students are expected to learn from your class. Adapt your activities so that you can meet individual learning needs and interests, especially if you are working in an area that has some tradition and some local, there are some local traditions, or there are some individual needs for some students at your school. Please address and adapt your activities accordingly. And it's also a great idea to use games and play as a tool for assessment and reflection. Some debriefing strategies at the end of the playful learning of a playful learning class, or some debriefing strategies and some questioning strategies at the end or between your games can help you use it as a reflection tool and encourage formative assessment during lesson design. So if we need to conclude this presentation and say why are we working with play-based learning and playful pedagogies, we believe that play-based learning is essential for fostering the well-rounded or holistic development of students. And we as teachers play a pivotal role in guiding and supporting our students' journeys. We need to facilitate and ensure that they have the best possible opportunities to experience their participation in education as something that will be as an experience that will be collaborative and will enhance their memories and support them in the future. So we believe that games and play are a great tool that we can use when working in various educational fields. So join the Teaching Games for Understanding organization and other opportunities for engaging with games to support us in making a difference with games and play-based learning.